There's a story about a farmer, let's call him John, who was out ploughing his fields. And something caught his attention, and he looked up towards the sun, and there was a white cloud near the sun, and John saw this bright red words written on the cloud. He had to squint to read the words that said, "The end is near." And John collapsed on his knees and cried out, "Lord, help me." And then he hurried to his barn and let his cows and all the animals out of their pens, and he let all the chickens out of the chicken house. And then he got into his suit and climbed up top of his house to await the end. But it didn't come, and he pouted and he refused to come down off the roof. And finally, his wife called the local priest, who came over and said, "John, you idiot, I saw that same sign. It's an advertising banner behind a plane. It didn't say, 'The end is near.' It said, 'Go drink a beer.'" So he needed an instruction to come down off that roof before he fell off and broke his neck. So, from Jesus' day to the present, people have speculated about when the world would end. Now, the church gets us to reflect on the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell, during the last 2 weeks of ordinary time. But this year, the beginning of Advent, has got us to continue this reflection, and during this time of waiting, this time of preparation, as we have this gospel with all of these very, very graphic images and signs in it. So the gospel promises that Jesus will return. And some people read today's gospel and observe events on earth, and the pandemic, the earthquakes, wars, plastics polluting the oceans and the food chain, global warming, the extreme weather, and they believe that they know the precise moment of Jesus' arrival. Sadly, they've always been wrong and always will be wrong. We are still waiting. And obviously, the biblical description of Jesus' return isn't meant for people to predict the future. Instead, it speaks to our hope and what we do while we wait. That's the important thing about what we do while we wait. And so, what about us? We're still waiting. Jesus has not returned to draw the final curtain. What is more important is recognizing the signs of his presence to show that he's already with his church. Jesus will be a very, 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 very long time in coming for the end of the world, but certainly he's already present, especially when his disciples mirror his extraordinary acts like forgiving the offender, when we dedicate our lives to caring for the poor and the infirm, when in challenging the world powers to pursue peace, sharing the COVID vaccine with all the peoples of the world, raising a good family under stressful conditions, speaking up to local and national governments for just laws, having the courage to challenge corruption. These are just some ways we can practice what Jesus tells us in today's gospel. Be vigilant at all times and pray. And that's how people will know the already presence of Christ in the world, by the powerful signs at work in his disciples. As Jesus instructed us, we will practice vigilance until he returns, and to be on the watch for ways to put into action the faith that we profess here in church today. Does that disappoint us a little? Does it leave us feeling a little let down? Where is the spectacular return that Jesus promised? Well, we need to open the eyes of our faith and see. There have been Christians whose faith has shown Christ in splendor for all to see. Some of my favorite saints, Archbishop Oscar Romero, Dorothy Day, Thomas Merton. In our own country, we think of Blessed Benedict Daswa and saints in progress like Danny and Domitilla Hyams. Their lives were spectacular. They were similar to the Gospel's description of Jesus' return. It's this brilliant and obvious to anyone who saw and heard them about their spectacular lives. And that's how we come to understand the words. And then you will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud with power and great glory. We are everyday Christians just living quiet lives that witness to the great glory that reflects Jesus' presence. We live our calling as disciples, hoping our behavior reflects the reign of God already present in the world. And if we all lived faithful lives of daily discipleship, we would be a powerful force for the transformation of the world. And that would certainly show Jesus' already presence with us. We can't predict God's schedule for the end time, no matter how much we analyze or overwork the apocalyptic text about it. But we can work as individuals and as a faith community to stop the threats to human existence. We can join our efforts with people of goodwill to cherish the gifts of all people, as well as preserve our natural environment upon which our survival depends. Now, the gospel has some really scary and frightening warnings. And the warnings apply to our personal world as well as to the universal world. The end of the universal world is billions of years away, but the end of our personal world happens at our death, when we face judgment before the Lord. So we must be vigilant and do what we must to maintain our faith and to keep our focus on Christ. Today the gospel makes us look towards the future when God's promises will come to completion. But we mustn't just live in the future. I know that these are the days before Christmas, and they tend to be overloaded with planning and worrying about how will we celebrate the holidays if new lockdown restrictions come into place. Because we're worried about the emergence of this new Omicron variety of COVID. But I want us today to have hope in the future and to be able to invest our energies in the present, in the now. Each day we work and look towards the now, seeing the presence of Christ in all the events and challenges that constitute our lives in Christ.